There is a night in the history of Las Vegas that you won't find in the official logs of the Sands Hotel. November 1966, the Copa Room, a room so thick with smoke and perfume you could practically taste the money in the air. But that night, Frank Sinatra, the man who held that city in the palm of his hand, did something that made the music stop and the room go dead silent. It wasn't a song, and it wasn't a joke. It was an act of rebellion so personal and so explosive that the casino bosses tried to scrub it from memory. They didn't want the world to see the chairman of the board risk his entire empire for a busboy nobody knew. But secrets in Vegas are like chips on a table. Eventually, someone cashes them in. This is the story of the night Frank Sinatra silenced the Sands to save a stranger, and why, for decades, those who were there were afraid to whisper about it. It reveals a side of old Blue Eyes that the cameras never caught. A moment where the tuxedo didn't matter, but the man inside it did. By the way, tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? Las Vegas in 1966 was a kingdom, and Frank Sinatra was its king. The Rat Pack era was evolving. The Beatles were taking over the charts, and the pressure on Frank was immense. He was 50 years old, fighting to prove he was still the heavyweight champion of entertainment. He was preparing for a run of shows at the Sands that had to be perfect. The live album was being planned with Count Basie. The arrangements by Quincy Jones were sharp as a razor. Everything had to be tight. Frank was known for his candlestick temper. One flick, and he could burn the house down. But beneath that volatile exterior was a man who remembered what it was like to be a skinny kid from Hoboken that nobody believed in. The Sands was a machine. Behind the glamour of the showroom, there was an army of invisible workers: cooks, cleaners, porters, and lighting assistants. Among them was a young man named Leo. Leo was 22, but he looked 16. He was slight, with messy hair and a stutter that became paralyzed silence whenever anyone shouted at him. Leo worked in the shadows of the Copa Room, polishing the brass railings, setting the microphone stands, and making sure the ashtrays were spotless for the high rollers. He was invisible to the millionaires in the front row, but to Leo, this job was everything. He worshipped the music. He knew every breath Frank took in Angel Eyes, every snap of the finger in Fly Me to the Moon. But the Sands had a new floor manager that season, a man named Sal Moretti. Moretti was a different breed of Vegas operator. He wasn't a showman. He was a numbers guy, cold, slick, and cruel. He wore suits that cost more than Leo's family made in a year, and he treated the staff not like people, but like gum on the bottom of his Italian leather shoes. Moretti wanted the Copa Room to run with military precision, and he despised weakness. Unfortunately, he had decided that Leo was the definition of weakness. The tension started on a Tuesday afternoon during sound check. The band was warming up, the brass section blasting those iconic opening notes. Frank was center stage, a cigarette in one hand, a microphone in the other, adjusting his tie. He was in a mood. The sound wasn't bouncing right off the back wall. He was snapping at the sound engineer, his perfectionism in overdrive. "It sounds like I'm singing into a tin can," Frank barked, pacing the stage like a panther. The room was tense. Everyone was walking on eggshells. In the wings, Leo was trying to quietly replace a burnt-out bulb on a floor light. His hands were shaking. He dropped a wrench. Clang. The sound echoed through the empty showroom like a gunshot. The music stopped. Frank turned his head, his blue eyes narrowing, scanning the darkness of the stage wings. What was that? Leo froze. He wanted to disappear into the floorboards. But before Frank could say another word, Sal Moretti stormed out from the side shadows. He grabbed Leo by the collar of his oversized work shirt and shoved him against the brick wall. "You clumsy idiot," Moretti hissed, loud enough for the band to hear. "You trying to ruin the show? You trying to embarrass me? I'm sorry," Leo stammered, his face turning crimson. "Sorry doesn't fix the mood, kid," Moretti sneered. He slapped the wrench out of Leo's hand. "Get out of here. If I see you break one more thing, you're done. You hear me?" Frank watched this from center stage. He took a drag of his cigarette, his eyes locked on Moretti. He didn't say anything immediately. He just watched. He knew guys like Moretti. He grew up with them in New Jersey, the kind of guys who only felt big when they were making someone else feel small. Frank hated bullies. It was a primal hatred, something deep in his DNA. "Hey," Frank's voice cut through the air. It wasn't a shout, but it carried more weight than the entire orchestra. Moretti froze, his smile instantly turning sycophantic as he looked back at the stage. "Sorry, Frank. Just dealing with the incompetence. Won't happen again. Let the kid breathe, Sal," Frank said, his voice low, dangerous. He dropped a wrench. He didn't bomb the Vatican. Let him work. Moretti's jaw tightened, but he nodded. "Sure, Frank, whatever you say." He shoved Leo one last time, a subtle, nasty push toward the exit. "Go." Leo scrambled away, terrified. Frank watched him go, a shadow crossing his face. He recognized that fear. He remembered being the skinny Italian kid in a neighborhood that didn't want him. He turned back to the band. "All right, take it from the top, and Basie, give me more swing on the bridge." stage. The rehearsal continued, but the air had changed. Frank was watching now. He was watching everything. If you love stories about the hidden history of legends, make sure you subscribe for new stories right now, because we have files on everyone from Elvis to Monroe that will blow your mind. Over the next 2 days, the atmosphere backstage grew toxic. Moretti felt humiliated by Frank's comment, and a man like Moretti doesn't lash out at the king, he lashes out at the peasant. He targeted Leo with a vengeance. He gave him the worst shifts. He made him polish the same railing 3 times. He mocked his stutter in front of the showgirls, making them giggle nervously. Leo was crumbling. He needed this money. His mother was sick back in Ohio, and every dollar he made went into an envelope he mailed home on Fridays. He couldn't quit. He took the abuse, head down, eyes on the floor. Frank was busy. Press conferences, dinners with mob guys and movie stars, the endless party that was his life. But Frank Sinatra had a superpower. He noticed the things nobody thought he saw. On Wednesday night, passing through the kitchen on his way to his private suite, he saw Leo eating a sandwich, standing up near the garbage disposal. Frank stopped. His entourage, 2 bodyguards and his valet, stopped with him. Frank walked over. Leo looked up, terror in his eyes, expecting another reprimand. "You the kid with the wrench?" Frank asked, lighting a cigarette. Yes, Mr. S. Sinatra," Leo managed to whisper. Frank looked him up and down. He saw the frayed cuffs of Leo's shirt. He saw the exhaustion. "What's your name, kid?" "LL Leo." "Leo," Frank repeated. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a $100 bill, a fortune in 1966, and tucked it into Leo's shirt pocket. "Get yourself a better sandwich, and tell Moretti if he rides you, he rides me. Capiche?" Leo's eyes filled with tears. He nodded, unable to speak. Frank patted him on the cheek, a rough, fatherly gesture, and walked away. For Frank, it was a small moment. For Leo, it was like God himself had come down and blessed him. But that $100 bill would become the catalyst for the disaster that followed. Thursday night, the big show. The room was packed. Dean Martin was in the audience. There were senators, oil tycoons, and heavy hitters from Chicago. The champagne was flowing, and the anticipation was electric. Backstage, an hour before curtain, hell broke loose. Moretti found Leo in the hallway. He saw the $100 bill peeking out of Leo's pocket. Moretti grabbed it. "Where did you steal this from, you little rat?" "I didn't steal it," Leo cried, trying to grab it back. "Mr. Sinatra gave it to me." Moretti laughed, a cruel, cold sound. "Frank Sinatra gave a stuttering nobody like you a C-note? Don't lie to me." He ripped the bill in half and let the pieces fall to the floor. "You're a thief, and you're a liar, and tonight you're going to learn your place." What Moretti did next was the act that would seal his fate. He didn't just fire Leo. He wanted to break him. He grabbed a bucket of ice water from a nearby service cart and threw it over Leo, soaking his work clothes, shivering him to the bone. Then he pointed to a pair of his own shoes that he had taken off to change into his evening wear. "Clean them," Moretti ordered. "On your knees. I want to see my face in them, and don't you dare get up until they shine." Leo dropped to his knees, shivering, crying silently, and began to polish the shoes of the man who was tormenting him. He was broken. Frank was in his dressing room, sipping 3 fingers of Jack Daniels, adjusting his cufflinks. He was ready. He felt good. The one for my baby mood was hitting him just right. He opened the door to head towards the stage, his bodyguards flanking him. He walked down the corridor, the sounds of the orchestra warming up, vibrating through the walls. He turned the corner and stopped dead. He saw Leo, on his knees, soaking wet, polishing shoes while Moretti stood over him, smoking a cigar, laughing with a couple of security guards. The hallway went silent. The temperature seemed to drop 20 degrees. Frank didn't yell. He didn't scream. He went perfectly, terrifyingly still. The blue steel gaze that could charm a woman or freeze a mobster locked onto Moretti. Frank walked over. The sound of his patent leather shoes on the concrete floor was a slow, deliberate rhythm. Click, click, click. Moretti looked up, his smile faltering. "Frank, just getting the help to—" "Shut up," Frank said. It was a whisper, but it hit like a sledgehammer. Frank looked at Leo. He saw the ripped money on the floor. He saw the water dripping from the kid's nose. He saw the absolute humiliation of a human being. Frank reached down and gently grabbed Leo's arm. "Get up, Leo." "I can't. He said—" "I said get up," Frank commanded, but his voice was soft toward the boy. He pulled Leo to his feet. Then he turned to Moretti. "You like people on their knees, Sal?" Frank asked. He took a step closer, invading Moretti's personal space. The smell of expensive cologne mixed with the sudden scent of fear coming off the manager. "It's just discipline, Frank. You know how it is? You gotta run a tight ship," Moretti stammered, backing up. "Discipline," Frank repeated. "You think this is discipline? This is garbage. You're garbage." Frank turned to his bodyguard. "Get the kid a towel. Get him a dry suit. One of mine." "Frank, the show starts in 5 minutes," the bodyguard warned. "The show starts when I say it starts," Frank roared, the explosion finally happening. The veins in his neck bulged. "And right now I'm not singing a note until this trash is taken out." He pointed a finger at Moretti. "You, get out of my sight. If I see you in this building when I come off stage, I'll throw you through the window myself. Moretti turned pale. He scrambled away, disappearing into the offices. But Frank wasn't done. The anger was still boiling in him. He adjusted his jacket, took a deep breath, and looked at Leo, who was being wrapped in a towel. "You okay, kid?" Leo nodded, stunned. "Good. You're watching the show from the wings tonight." Close up, Frank walked onto the stage. The curtain rose. The applause was deafening. The band kicked into "I've Got the World on a String." Frank grabbed the mic, but he didn't sing. He let the band play the intro. Then he raised his hand. "Hold it," he said. The band stopped. A jagged silence filled the Copa Room. 500 people stared at him. Frank looked out at the audience. He looked tired. He looked furious. He looked human. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, his voice scratching with emotion, "we're gonna have a great time tonight. We're gonna swing. But before we do, I gotta get something off my chest." He paced the stage. "There's a lot of things in this town that glitter, but underneath, sometimes it's just rust. I saw something backstage tonight that made me sick. And I want you to know, as long as I'm standing on this stage, nobody, and I mean nobody, gets treated like an animal in my house." The crowd was confused. Was this a bit? Was this part of the act? "There's a kid back there." Frank pointed a thumb over his shoulder. "Works harder than any of us, and he was treated with zero respect. If we lose respect for the little guy, then all this." He gestured to the chandeliers, the velvet, the tuxedo. "This is all just a costume party." He paused, looking directly at the VIP table where the hotel owners sat. "If you want the music, you gotta have the heart to go with it. Otherwise I walk." For a second, nobody breathed. Frank Sinatra, the biggest star on the planet, was threatening to walk out on a sold-out show for a janitor. Then he turned to the band. "Hit it!" The brass exploded. Frank launched into the song with a ferocity they had never heard before. He wasn't just singing. He was fighting. He was attacking the notes. The show that night was legendary. It was raw. It was aggressive. It was the best performance of his life because he was singing for Leo. If you are enjoying this dive into the secret history of the Sands, please subscribe for new stories because we have so many more lost nights to uncover together. The aftermath was swift and silent. By the time the show ended, Sal Moretti had packed his desk. You didn't cross Frank Sinatra at the Sands in 1966. Moretti was blacklisted from every major casino on the Strip. He ended up managing a dive bar in Reno. But the real story is what happened to Leo. After the final curtain call, Frank went back to his dressing room. He didn't go to the after party. He didn't go gambling. He sat Leo down. He poured him a glass of water. "You got family, kid?" Frank asked. My mom," Leo said. "In Ohio. She sick?" Yes," Frank nodded. He picked up the phone on his dressing table. He dialed his personal accountant. "It's Francis. I need a check cut. And I need a doctor in Ohio. The best one." He hung up. He looked at Leo. "You're done polishing brass, Leo. You got ears? You like the music?" "I love it, Mr. Sinatra." "Good. Starting tomorrow. You're working in the sound booth. You're gonna learn the board. You're gonna learn how to make me sound good. No more knees. You stand up. Always stand up." Leo started to cry again. Frank stood up, uncomfortable with the gratitude. He fixed his cufflinks. "Hey, knock it off. We got work to do." Leo became one of the best sound engineers in the business. He worked with Frank for 10 years. He never stuttered when he was behind the mixing board. The music gave him a voice, and Frank gave him the chance to use it. Years later, a reporter asked Frank about that night. They asked him why he stopped the show, why he risked a breach of contract lawsuit for a busboy. Frank looked at the reporter with those cold blue eyes and said, "Because a man is a man. It don't matter if he's wearing a tuxedo or a rag. You strip away the lights, and we're all just trying to get through the night without being kicked. I got kicked plenty when I was coming up. I don't let people get kicked in my house." The recordings of that night's speech were destroyed by the casino management. They didn't want the public to know there was friction. They wanted the illusion of perfection. But the band knew. The showgirls knew. And Leo knew. The story of the night Frank Sinatra stopped the music reminds us that true class isn't about how you wear the suit or how you sing the note. It's about what you do when the power is in your hands and someone helpless is at your feet. Frank Sinatra, with all his flaws, his anger and his ego, passed the only test that really matters. He was a giant, not because of the voice, but because of the heart. But the question remains for us today. In a world full of Sal Morettis, are we brave enough to stop the music and speak up? Before we go, I have a feeling you're going to want to hear the next chapter of this saga. Subscribe for new stories to join our community of history lovers. And finally, just when everyone thought the night was over, as Frank was leaving the casino at 3 a.m., he saw Leo one last time waiting by the stage door. Leo didn't say a word. He just stood up straight, looked Frank in the eye, and nodded. A nod from one man to another. Frank tipped his hat, got into his limo, and disappeared into the neon desert night. We'll see you in the next story. Subscribe for new stories so you don't miss it. Wait, before you click away, there is one more detail about Leo that surfaced years later, but we'll save that secret for another time. Subscribe for new stories.